The most reliable explanation scientists have right now for what makes fat people less healthy than skinny people is the abuse they undergo. It's the discrimination that makes fat people unhealthy, nothing else.
And I personally find your use of accountability language super disturbing.
Hey everybody, welcome back. My name's Nadia. I hope you're all doing really well today. We're gonna look at some fat acceptance TikTok and talk about them. And I'm also gonna do a little touch base at the end of this video since I've been sick and gone for a couple weeks. But for now, we're gonna look at some TikToks with the theme for today being fat acceptance sort of making an enemy out of accountability.
So here's the story about how I got into a verbal argument with a terribly fat-phobic doctor. So I like literally blacked out in this situation.
This was a really long story time over multiple TikToks, so we're gonna look at just what was related to this doctor being quote unquote fat phobic.
Just feel like I have a really good read of people's like character, and right away, like as soon as we locked eyes, I was like, oh, this is not gonna go well. I live in Florida. This was the epitome of the Florida male. Like everything you would think that that person would be was this doctor.
Kind of a funny way to set up a story about fat phobia, saying that you can just look at someone and make a judgment call about their character. Meanwhile, Hayes and fat acceptance are constantly asserting that you can't infer anything meaningful about someone's lifestyle even just by looking at them.
You cannot tell jack shit about me from looking at me. You cannot tell how much I eat. You cannot tell anything about me other than the fact that I am fat. And you take that and you just run with it because the truth is you hate fat people.
Stop assuming fat people's food choices and activity levels by looking at them, because you can't, and more than likely you will be wrong.
She can look in your eyes and tell you're a bad person, but if we look at someone who's morbidly obese and assume that food has anything to do with it, then we're just fat phobic dummies.
I just got off like an hour-long training that I did for work, and he goes, oh, what line of work are you in? So I shot back right away and I was like, oh, I'm a registered dietitian. But I usually will say I'm an eating disorder counselor because then that just kind of like stops people from saying super diety bullshit to me. So then he goes, oh, a dietitian. Well, we have a huge problem in America with obesity. And you know me, I take a deep breath and I'm like, oh, fuck, what did I just do? And I was like, why don't you just let him talk? Because this guy clearly just wants to hear himself talk. So I let him just spew his fat phobic shit all over the room. And then he goes on to say like, you know, how America, like we just need to stop eating. And for some reason I go, oh, well, that's interesting because 1 in 8 children are hungry. And like we have a really huge problem in this country as well with like hunger.
We spoke about intellectual dishonesty in a video recently, and I think this is a really good example of that concept. This doctor made a true statement that food and overeating is a big part of the obesity epidemic, and I think she's smart enough to know that her FA rhetoric about how food is in no way related to body size wouldn't be accepted by the doctor in front of her. So she chooses to reply with a red herring about how there are starving children in America. It's not a counter argument, it's a derailment. And honestly, this was the meat of her story. This was the violent fat-phobic encounter that she blacked out from.
So I like literally blacked out in this situation.
And this story has gotten a lot of attention, over 1 million views so far. And that says a lot to me about what fat acceptance is feeling victimized by currently. It seems to be reality. A doctor discussing the obesity epidemic with a registered dietitian, it's really mundane. It's a non-story out here in the real world. But inside fat acceptance, this is some ring the alarm, violent, fat-phobic encounter. And I imagine the rest of the world does seem particularly hostile and confusing when you're deeply entrenched in an ideology that's perfectly tailored around your feelings. An ideology that tells you that you're perfect and it's everyone else who's actually the problem. to the point that they're the ones actually harming your health.
The most reliable explanation scientists have right now for what makes fat people less healthy than skinny people is the abuse they undergo. It's the discrimination that makes fat people unhealthy, nothing else.
And I personally find your use of accountability language super disturbing.
The real world doesn't contort itself to unconditionally positively reinforce us, but fat acceptance does. So they create an enemy out of accountability, whether it's intentional or not.
When the enemy is stigma. The enemy is fat phobia. The enemy is the medical establishment telling us that fatness is unhealthy.
It's your fault! If you're somebody who says that they care about their health and you focus a lot on nutrition or exercise, or those are things you consider to be the most important parts of your health, check this out. Welcome to the social determinants of health. As the name suggests, it's what factors influence your health. And if you're anything like me, you probably thought that your physical fitness, your weight, and your nutrition were the most important factors. So it's probably gonna be this whole chunk over here in orange, or maybe in green. Think again. Let's zoom in, shall we? Of this 21% over here, there's weight. I can hardly see it. Oh, there it is.
That orange section is the individual behaviors category, and it's the largest category represented on this diagram of determinants of health. And the section she's pointing to with weight in it is on the metrics part of this diagram, as in, it's not even one of the determinants listed in that section. It's one of the metrics used for evaluating body structure. The way she's reinterpreting this information to suit her own narrative is how fat acceptance dogma is born.
Now you know! Also, wait, that's so crazy. It's under genetics and biology. So not something that can be controlled. Interesting.
Yeah, notice that it's not attached to the genetics branch. And if we actually dig around this category, we find things like nutrition, fitness, and blood pressure, all in the micro determinants of our body function. But what this chart actually says doesn't really seem to be important for this lesson.
Let's see over here. I think I see it. Oh wow, it's just, diet patterns and physical activity. Huh. That's it. Just there. Which means that the whole rest of the chart is what matters. And your physical activity and diet represents like a teeny tiny sliver. In fact, these societal factors matter way more. Our healthcare systems, our community and social context, economic stability, neighborhood and physical environment. Food and physical activity are just a piece of the puzzle. Health is multidimensional. It's definitely not just how much kale you consume or how many workout classes you go to.
So the whole point of misrepresenting this data was what? To convince people that choosing a healthy lifestyle is irrelevant or on par with an unhealthy lifestyle because society.
What you're saying is everything is society's fault and we as individuals never need to take responsibility for anything.
Health is multidimensional and there are aspects that influence our health that we can't control. But waiting on society to change or circumstances to change is not a solution. Fortunately, we do interact with our own health in consequential ways. This isn't a burden, it's actually good news. It's incredible that we can alter the expression of our genes with the food we consume and the lifestyle we maintain. That means we have some power, which also means responsibility, right? Yet, even at the expense of their own well-being and others, they would rather maintain a total lack of personal responsibility than actually empower people to participate in their own health.
It's not my fault. It's not my fault.
Is it so hard to believe that the opposite is also true?
People will argue with you until their final dying breath that there's no way someone can be naturally fat.
For context, this is the full video that she's stitching right now.
Okay, you know how some people eat and eat and eat and they just can't gain weight? Why is it so hard to believe that the opposite is also true?
Your whole lineage, big fat family tree could be in front of them and they'd be like, have you tried diet and exercise? Just continues to be interesting as we look at how people talk about thin body types. Now, this was on a video that was about how celebrities are even thinner in person, and Zendaya came up. She's just super slim. I think for some of them, it's just their body type. Might just be genetics. She's just slim and tall. She works hard every day to stay that slim. Now, which is it? Are they naturally thin or are they working very hard? It just further proves to me that we put thinness on such this pedestal that we are willing to openly speak contradictory about it if it means defending the status. Where there's only one way that you can be fat and it's wrong, but there's multiple ways to be thin and they're all right. Maybe we just stop assuming things about people's bodies.
PCOS or anything like that, I want to indulge the fat acceptance fantasy here for a minute. Pretend that what they're saying is true and that we as individuals have no real control over our body size and we're at the mercy of our genetics.
Oh look, another random person on TikTok making outrageous claims with no sources to make them feel better about their choices. No, Andrew, I read. There's a growing body of research on weight and body size that is emerging within the last 5 years that's finding a lot of it is genetically predetermined.
We hardly talk about genetics being the largest factor and predictor of body type.
If obesity were purely genetic, it would mean obesity is even more of a medical concern, not less of one. It doesn't suddenly neutralize all bodies and all lifestyles. It doesn't mean that all bodies are good bodies now. It would actually be in direct opposition to their stance that you can't pathologize a body size, aka their position that obesity isn't real because body size isn't a disease.
And a lot of the oppression that fat people face comes from the medicalization of our bodies.
Even a quick glance at some of their own sources that they're counting on others not to read apparently confirms this. They mention obesity in terms of crisis and concern. And in the reality where it's purely genetic and you really can't control it with nutrition or lifestyle interventions, we're now fading people to some sort of surgical or pharmacological treatment as the only option for managing obesity. And this version of reality, where we're all doomed to reside in whatever bodies happen to find us, is somehow more comforting to fat acceptance than the one where we're active participants in our health.
Actions have consequences!
And that is where we're gonna end this one. Thank you so much for coming to hang out on this video with me and making it all the way to the end if you're still here. Let me know what you thought down below and like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. It really helps my channel a lot. So just a quick little touch base. I did get really sick after my last video. And for those who have been following, you know that I just moved. So I moved from a town with a little over 1,000 people population wise to a much bigger, more normal sized city. And I ended up getting the virus. I don't know how YouTube responds to the name, so I'm just going to leave it out of this video. But it really, a full recovery, including my ability to taste and smell, because that has been really frustrating. So that's it for me in my world right now. I'm trying to get caught up in all parts of my life, including YouTube. So I'll have another video up soon. Everybody take care until then, and thank you so much for the support. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.